Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, all the participants. We have 3 participants, I think. So today's topic is role of assessment tools. And these assessment tools include environment impact assessment, social impact assessment, environment management system. And apart from that, there is environment management plan, because in institutional projects where EIA is not required, their EMP is required for getting CTE. That EMP is also a kind of tool, but because this is a very concise presentation, though there are the number of slides is very large, but still it could not include all the material that is available in our environment impact assessment notifications and SIA notifications. So basically the outline of the presentation will be in continuation to our last presentation, where we have discussed the policy, the national policies, then environmental acts and laws. And now we'll be studying what are the tools and strategies which are available in our environment laws, so that we can do better environment governance and manage our environment in a better manner. So we'll be discussing environment impact assessment in general. What is the concept of EIA, how it started, and what was the need of it, what are its objectives, what are benefits, types of EIAs, procedures which are required for EIA. Then what is an EIA in Indian context in terms of environment impact assessment notification of 2006 and amendments thereof. Then what are the public concerns in EIA, strategies for undertaking EIAs, EMPs, and CRZ notification, coastal zone regulation notification, then strategic impact assessment, then concept of social impact assessment and environmental auditing, goals of environment auditing, steps of environment auditing, ISO 14,000. So one of the students was asking in the second unit's lecture regarding the outline of environment audit. So this lecture would be beneficial for the students who want to take up environment audit studies. And then ISO 14,000 also will be discussed, what are its benefit. So all these tools, they themselves in itself offer you a kind of option for your career. So for example, if you want to start with environment audit, these are some of the simplest studies which can be taken up in the field of environment. And starting with environment audit, you can just grow and learn and start doing environment consultancy for EIA. And then again for EMS, you have to take up a course from Norske, Veritas or BIS, and there are many other training bodies. Then for environmental management system also, you have to be like for initially you can act as a trainee and then you can grow as a professional. So all these tools and strategies, they themselves have much to offer to you in terms of environment management system for any industry, and then as a consultancy option for environment professionals. So being a country rich in natural resources and biodiversity, it is very impertinent for us to identify the biodiversity hotspots in our country, and then as per the demographic advantage, we should help and associate with the programs which are there for the protection of environment. And accordingly, there has been many environmental acts and laws have been formulated to ensure that these natural resources are preserved for coming generations. And again, as we had discussed in the last lecture, how economic growth, higher GDP, higher per capita income, and increased in requirement for infrastructure has led to several consequences like degradation of environment quality. And as the GDP grows, there is again a consequence of large population going below the poverty line. So the disparity between the richer and poorer becomes increased when there is growth in GDP. So that also requires to be balanced to ensure that equitable distribution of resources is there, and therefore we'll be able to achieve sustainable development goals. So starting with EIA, now it is a tool. Basically, it is an informed decision-making tool for the regulators, for the stakeholders, for the project proponents, for the brand owners, for the community, for NGO, for volunteers. All can use it as a tool. It not just because it is laid down in environment impact assessment notification and it is required for environment clearance. It can be used as a voluntary tool as well, which is definitely not very prevalent and not very easily found in our country. But if you implement any kind of World Bank project or any kind of internationally funded project, there you have to take up environment impact assessment. Somewhere it is nomenclature is different. It is called initial environment examination or project closure examination, but the purpose is basically to assess the impacts of the project on the project side and the biotic abiotic components of the project side. So it basically helps us to ensure that there are least environmental, social cost at the project site, and there are maximum benefits accrued to the project site, and economic benefits of the project are sustained in consequence to the environmental and social sustenance. So it shows us a path for sustainable development by ensuring that we conserve natural resource and ecological goods and services. So if this is one of my favorite slide, because if you understand this slide, the next 20 slides very easy for you to understand, because environment impact assessment is basically composed of three terms: environment, impact, and assessment. So if you break down it into three aspects: environment, impact, and assessment, then environment involves study of the baseline data. So what is our environment? Environment is all about our surroundings and about the location, about the project site, and about the biotic abiotic components that are present in the project site we have selected for our industrial project or any kind of project. So that is and basically what composes environment. So for study of environment, we need to collect all kind of baseline data, primary as well as secondary, related with air, water, noise, soil, groundwater. Every kind of component is studied in environment. So when it comes to impact, now any kind of project activity has different phases: design phase, implementation phase, construction phase, and then operation phase, commissioning stage, and closure stage can also be there depending upon the kind of project and the kind of activities involved in the project. So you have to analyze impact of each activity. So for example, during construction, there will be a lot of movement due to construction material transportation from to and from the project site. All kind of chemicals that will be brought in the project, hazardous chemicals that can be released, and what kind of impact will be there on air, on water, on soil. So all those impacts have to be enlisted. So then you have to analyze impact of each activity at each phase of the project on the different kind of aspects of environment. And when you come to assessment, you have to assess the impact subjectively. So in terms of severity, whether that impact will be permanent or temporary, and you have to suggest mitigation measures. So any kind of pollution, from the day we came on earth, we have started making this earth polluted through the waste we generate from the excreta we generate, from waste generate, from carbon dioxide we generate from our respiratory system. So we are doing all those activities which can pollute the environment right from the beginning of birth of humankind. but we cannot stop breathing so that there is no CO2 generation. We cannot stop generating solid waste or food waste by stopping consuming anything. So minimum pollution will be there no matter what we do. But what we have to do is mitigate that pollution. So we do not aim to achieve zero pollution stage. Okay, so when we call zero liquid discharge also, then also there has to be a discharge, but that discharge will not go out of the project premises. We cannot ensure that there is no discharge from the project. So any kind of activity will definitely emit pollutants, and it will cause some degradation to the environment. But how to mitigate and minimize that degradation is given in our environment management plan. And whatever activities we have to do in environment management plan, we will enlist it. We will allocate budgetary provisions for that, and accordingly that will be required for the implementation of the EMP in different phases of the project. And again, you have to make an environment cell or environment uh, observation committee, whatever may be the term. So that institutional arrangement has to be there on the project side, so that whatever provisions or commitments have been made for the mitigation of the project impacts, they can be implemented. Okay, so this is the meaning of environment impact assessment, whether it is in the purview of EIA notification or it is taken as a voluntary assessment tool. So the objectives will be, so if you have understood the last slide, you will be able to understand the objective is the concept of environment assessment is to understand the concept of strategic impact assessment, how to complement EIA in several aspects, and discuss various aspects of environmental auditing. And then you have to elaborate different environmental management system and standards like ISO 14000. So these are the objectives of this unit which we are discussing today. So environmental impact assessment, the concept is it is a formalized process used to predict the environment and the consequences of any development project, and then plan. It is also again a planning tool, because when you have planned what will be the mitigation measure, what will be the budget, who will be implementing, who will be responsible for the implementation of EMP. So all those things come under planning. So this EIA tool came into existence in 1970, but in India it was introduced in 1994. So in brief, the purpose is to predict likely environmental impact, find ways to reduce those impacts, and help to shape the project so that it suits the local environment rather than causing any negative impact. It helps in enhancing the quality of life in the project vicinity. And it also presents you the predictions. So it also predicts what kind of pollution will be there when operational. Accordingly, the decision makers, the stakeholders can be involved in mitigating those negative impacts based on the predictions of the project activities. So it's a very useful tool in that context. So the principles are basically focus on the main issues. There can be many minor issues and there has to be some major issues. So we have to focus on the main issues, and accordingly minor issues will be taken care of if we are able to control the main issues. So the concept, this whole concept and the principles were conceived by United Nations Environment Program. So that program again came under Stockholm Declaration. So then it also involves appropriate groups and persons like stakeholders through public hearing or through public interest litigation. Then again, we have to communicate whenever there is a public hearing, you have to communicate to the public through some daily newspapers that we are going to conduct this public hearing meeting at this location for this project. cost, and all other documents are lying with this person who may be contacted. So this kind of advertisement is given in newspaper so that people and persons, groups, volunteers, NGOs can be involved. And then you have to link information of the project with the decisions which can be taken up in the future. So there is clear mitigation plan, and there is sound environment management if it is done properly. So it becomes very useful in terms of curtailing the impact of a project, especially negative impacts, and enhancing the positive impacts of the project. So basically its benefit involves in scientific change, in design and engineering change. For example, if I see that electric arc furnace is good for the environment, it will cause lower pollution levels, and it also enhances my production quality, then definitely at the design stage, I will ensure that electric arc furnace is there whenever I am going to take up any foundry project, rather than going for the conventional furnace. So these kind of decision makers have this kind of choices at the initial stage of the project itself, considering the impacts of the project at the later stage. Accordingly, if I am designing a building, I will go for green building, so that the operational cost of air conditioning at the operational stage of the building will be lowered. And I will see what is the direction of sun, so that accordingly I can the direction of my building is as per the solar map of the area, and there is maximum benefit of the sun and the direction of the building, so that there is minimum load on air conditioning, and the heat island effect is again minimized. So all those kind of benefits can be accrued from EIA if we take it right from the design of the project. So these are basically three types of EIAs there: preliminary EIA, rapid EIA, and comprehensive EIA. So the projects where, for example, I told you there are many international projects where we do initial environment examination. So that is a kind of preliminary EIA. And this nomenclature of initial environment examination is basically from ADB guidelines. So bank guidelines, again, they have a project uh, uh, ESA document is there, environment and safety impact assessment, ESIA document is there. So that is preliminary EIA, which is basically for reconnaissance of major impacts, identification of impacts. And so, most of the projects do not require environment clearance, but still EIA is done. Then there is rapid EIA, which requires 3-month study, baseline data collection, prediction of impacts, and preparation of EMP. And these activities are basically same in all the EIAs. The difference lies in the extent of time duration which is involved in each of these studies, and the kind of data, detailed data which is generated in these studies. So preliminary EIA's duration is 1 month, and it is all the data which is considered in these EIAs is basically the existing information, the secondary information in terms of papers, reports, maps, like groundwater maps are there, development maps. For example, if I'm studying any project location, I will see whether the project has been already identified in the master plan of the project till 2030. So I will not require any change in land use, and it has already got basic infrastructure like roads and SS roads to the highways, and pipelines have been laid down if it is already covered under the master plan. But if it is a standalone project, then I have to take care of all other like elite services like water connection, stormwater, drainage, and all that. Then we have to meet with the beneficiaries and project affected people to apprise them about what is the project that is coming up, and what are the scope and objectives of its activities. Then in rapid EIA, again, it is a 3-month study. Baseline data will be there, prediction of impacts will be there, and then comprehensive EIA, where the extent of duration is up to 15 months. So because it requires primary data and baseline data for all the seasons. So comprehensive EIA is basically done for the projects where the impacts are more of rather than temporary, they are of permanent nature, like dam projects, windmill projects, thermal power projects, where large extent of land is involved, coal mining projects. So there comprehensive EIA is required. So basic the procedures involved in EIA, as already discussed, collection and collation of information regarding different environment components, then data requirement, both primary, secondary, then process includes what kind of activities will be done and what will be the impact of activities on project, on environmental aspects, on project alternatives. So if, for example, if there is a the project is coming in between two land pieces where one of the land pieces is gives a route for elephants or for any other species of animal for nesting of birds, for example, migratory birds are visiting at that location. So we can find an alternative project location so that there is minimum impact on the biodiversity of that area. So those kind of project alternatives and alternative project sites are also identified and studied. So the steps basically involves are, first is the data is collected, the project background, objective, policies are studied, and accordingly project activities are determined in different phases. And again, what will be the raw material requirement, resources requirement, land, water, energy, even power permissions for electricity are studied, who will be giving, what will, how much power is required, where will be the substation, because we have to directly or indirectly ensure that the project is sustainable and it can ensure that the activities and objectives for which it has been planned, it should be implemented. Otherwise, the study of EIA is incomplete. So we have to ensure what are the phases. We have to study those phases. What are the resource requirements in different phases? What is the project background? What will be the technology and materials? What are the sources of different kind of emissions from the project? How we are going to control those emissions and how we are going to recover the resources, recycle the resources. For example, in thermal power plant, we have to ensure whatever fly ash waste which is again a hazardous waste, then those lakhs and lakh tons of fly ash have to be allocated for brick kilns or for construction projects or for road construction projects. So a closed loop cycle has to be determined before the project starts. That is covered under the interaction with other projects. So again, the procedure is discussed in after diagrammatic view. We have discussed it in written format. Then data on environment is required to be collected for physical environment, topography, what will be the contour. So if it is a large land project, land is required for the project, we have to ensure the storm water does not goes downstream in the downstream fields or rivers and pollutes those areas. So we have to ensure that the stormwater drainage system is there as per the topography, like natural topography and contour plan of the project site. Then meteorology, what is the wind speed and wind direction, and solar installation, so that if you have to ensure that solar water heaters are there or street lighting is done as through solar energy. So those things have to be studied with meteorology, and accordingly you have to design different components which can ensure maximum benefit to the project. Again, geology has to be studied for ensuring that the foundation of the project is good. So for that purpose, geotechnical study report is required. Then hydrology is also study for ensuring there is no pollution to the groundwater. So different aspects become important in different kind of projects. For example, hydrology becomes important for a landfill site construction project, and meteorology becomes important for a project of where chemical production is involved, because if there is any leakage of chemical, so the wind speed and wind direction will govern what kind of pollution will be there in the downstream village areas or locations. So accordingly, you have to ensure that disaster management plan, risk assessment system is there. So again, ecological environment has to be studied, vegetation, fauna, flora, what kind of bird, there are any sensitive species or any rare and endangered species as per schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, then you have to make a wildlife management plan. Then land use has to be studied, agriculture, forestry, wasteland, what kind of land is existing in the project vicinity, so that minimum impact is there. Then infrastructure has to be studied, what kind of human settlements, roads and railways, whether the project is having basic SS for the basic activities or related with transportation and providing fuel for the project. Then socioeconomics, demography, health, education, how we are going to obtain labor, what is the kind of education level that is required, whether the labor is available locally. So if I'm going to establish a call center in a remote rural area, then again I will have problem in getting manpower for my project. So that's why most of the IT based industry comes up in urban areas, so that the manpower required for the project is available in the vicinity, and there is least cost, and maximum benefit can be given to the educated youth, or for the employment of the youth in that area. So accordingly, if my project requires unskilled labor, so I will prefer that it is established in a rural area, so that maximum unskilled labor can be employed, and I can give benefit of the project for the local employment, for the increase in the living standard of the local population. Then downtown project alternatives has also needs to be studied as per the detailed project review. Detailed project report has to be reviewed, that is DPR should be studied, and we should give detailed analysis of the pros and cons of different locations, and accordingly we should select the location which is having least drawbacks and maximum positive implications of the project. So basically, on the basis of what we have discussed, this is the diagrammatic view to make you understand more easily, and to conclude it in a better, interesting format. So basically, we started with site selection, environmental screening, initial assessment, then pre-feasibility, feasibility, design and engineering, implementation. Then during this process, we ensured that is detailed assessment of significant impacts, identification of mitigation needs. Then this cycle continues. The project concept keeps on getting re-evaluated and improved as per the requirement of the project activities. So the methodologies of our data collection include, there are all the as per Indian standards, there are many standard methods which are prescribed by Central Pollution Control Board and BIS. And for all those parameters where Indian standards are lacking, we can refer to the American Public Health Guidelines. Okay. So all those guidelines are followed, and these are standard methods. This has also been mentioned in Central Pollution Control Board. And apart from that, there, if you search in Google, there is technical document EIA of every kind of industry. Okay, for construction projects, there is technical document for how to conduct EIA for construction industry, how to conduct EIA for mining projects, like sustainable sand mining management guidelines are there. So for different kind of projects, you have detailed out guidelines on the website of Ministry of Environment and Forest. And then you have all the standard methods laid down in these guidelines for even for the survey of flora of project and fauna. And nowadays, because you need to get an accreditation from Quality Council of India for getting EIA and for working as environment consultant for environment clearances. So all these standard methods are in the syllabus of Quality Council of India also. So if you search for Quality Council of India's guidelines for environment impacts assessment consultants, EIA consultants, So you will be able to find those guidelines, and there you for every kind of professional, like for geologists, for zoologists, for sociologists, for economists, there is a specific functional area expert is required for different subjects covered under the environment practices. All different fields and the professionals and the academicians in different fields can utilize their experience and utilize their technical skills for EIA by getting accredited under the EIA guidelines of Quality Council of India. So again, there are standard methods such as direct and indirect evidences, and there are questionnaire surveys for social environment assessment. Yeah, there is focal group discussion or focused group discussion. It is called, sometimes it is called focal and sometimes focused. Then participatory rural appraisal is also a technique for sociological environment assessment. Then secondary data is collected from published reports and literature, so that it can be evaluated in comparison to the secondary data of reliable government and research and R&D departments. So basically, sometimes EIA has been objective in many places, in many countries, because the stakeholders, or especially the project proponents, who do not want to compromise on the duration that needs to be taken up before the start of the project. So they want to go for the project right away, rather than going for EIA study and spending some time on study of environmental impacts. So because their basic concern is still making profit. Okay, so most of the times project proponents, they claim that this EIA process is very expensive. They need to submit a lot of data, and collection of data also again requires time and money, and they have to contact lot of laboratories for different kind of data. So all these, again, submission of application, presentation of the application, and then this environment clearance letter, when this letter is given, it delays the project. So all that time which is required for these activities is observed as a cause of delay of the project. So then they also claim that this slows down the economic development, because if the project is, for example, a big project like a windmill power development or thermal power development project, they are taking 1 year or 9 months to 1 year for their EIA process. So in that time, if the project would have come up, it would have ensured economic development at a uh, at an earlier pace. So basically, they claim that it slows down the economic development. And again, there is lack of skilled human resources to prepare EIA reports. That's why I'm suggesting all the participants to think from that direction. That if you are having a botany honors or zoology honors, how you can become an expert of EIA, and how you can be accredited under the scheme of Quality Council of India for EIA consultants. Okay, so this is not given in IGNOU textbook, but side by side, I am trying to help you out, so that whatever knowledge you are acquiring, you can utilize that knowledge, especially in practical terms, in professional terms, for the benefit of the environment. So the strategies for undertaking EIA, basically, again, this is repetition only. You have to describe the physical characteristics. You have to estimate all the residues and emissions. You have to see the likely impacts of the project on the population, flora, fauna. So earlier I had given you a broader perspective. So here I have detailed out each and every aspect. So on the impact, all the impacts will be seen on population, flora, fauna, soil, air, water, climatic factors, material assets, even archaeological heritage. For example, in Taj trapezium zone, as we discussed yesterday, no construction project is allowed. So if you are even the project is coming beyond the Taj trapezium zone, you have to ensure that there is no air pollution caused from your project, because otherwise even your project can be shown can be given a show cause notice, and it can be stopped because of the pollution you are causing, and because of the immediate uh, location of a heritage site in the project vicinity. So when you are seeking project alternative, you have to take care that no such sensitive sites are located in the vicinity of the project. Then strategic likely significant impacts of the project have to be covered for use of natural resources. Then cost benefit analysis, if it is done and seen how much cost is involved and how benefit will be accrued from the project. So CBA is also a tool for ensuring that economically the project will be beneficial, and for ensuring that the project cost which will be involved in the environment management plan will also be benefited. Okay, so CBA is done for the complete project also, as well as for the environment related components in particular. Then environment management plan is determined. So environment management plan again can be different for and can be in detail for different projects. For example, for sand mining projects, it will involve plantation at the road transportation routes along the both sides of the transportation in routes. Then it will involve a protection of local flora and fauna because of the damage that will be caused to the riverbed because of the mining, sand mining in the local area. Then it will also involve giving education to the girl child in the village area where the project is located under the CSR activities, so that there is no the community is not protesting the project, rather than it should feel as a part of the project, and it should feel that the project is accruing some benefits to the local community and improving their living standard. So all these things have to be covered, and that's why we need to study socio-economic aspects of any project location. So again, these resources of air quality, water quality, they have a geographic area of analysis. For example, if I'm studying air quality, I will be studying 4 locations within the project core site, which is within the project site, within the 500-meter core area, and then the buffer area beyond the 500-meter up to 5 to 10 kilometer. Okay, so I can study the 5-kilometer area. If there is no sensitive location, then I will study up to 10-kilometer area, so that whatever sensitive location is there, that should have minimum impact from the project. And I should ensure that for example, I am going to establish a landfill area, and in the east direction I have a habitation, I have a housing complex. So in the east direction, I will not locate my main storage area for the project, because it will cause odor problem and pollution problem for the immediate housing complex. So in that area, I can establish my office site, so that there is a buffer between the production or storage of the solid waste, and then there is a administrative office, and then there is a housing complex. Again, I have to study what will be the meteorological conditions. So maximum time of the year there should not be any order issue, and again, if there is an order issue, due to the kind of technology that is there, if I am using a conventional technology, there can be an order issue. So accordingly, I will prepare a mitigation plan. I will ensure that I will purchase a bioculture which can be sprayed on my solid waste and landfill site, and which can help in faster degradation of solid waste and least order problems. So the cost of that culture or microbial culture which will be sprayed on my landfill site will be involved in the EMP cost. Okay, so all these kind of EMP management plans and impact assessment is governed by the geographical extent of your project area, and what kind of resources you are using: air quality, water quality, vegetation, wildlife, fishery, historical archaeological sites or socio-cultural sites or communities or temples. For example, maybe there is some, for example, if there is a construction project at the entry gate of your construction project, there is some mazar or some religious site is there, which there may not be a very people are not coming to that site on daily basis, but during some festivity or Ramadan period, people are coming and flocking on those sites in thousands and thousands of number. So at that time, there will be a traffic issue, management of traffic on the road, which is providing access to your housing complex is hampered. Okay, so accordingly you will prepare an EMP, and accordingly, if you have studied the socio-cultural aspects of the project, then you will make another assess or entry point to your project site, so that during that festivity period, another gate or another entry point or exit point can be utilized. So that is again a mitigation measure. So if you have studied all those socio-cultural aspects, then only you can plan such kind of mitigation measures. Then these are the basically 14 steps are there, right from the identification of significant defects. So whatever we have studied, this is basically divided in number of steps, and 14 steps have been divided, ranging from the starting from the identification of significant effects of the project to the existing relevant environment legislation for the proposed project, and what needs to be adhered to. Okay. So next we come to EMP. So EMP is a project specific plan. So as I have already discussed, I have given you a few examples, what will be EMP of sand mining project, how an EMP can help a housing project to ensure that access to the or entry to the project site is ensured during some socio-cultural activity. So every kind of EMP is a project specific action plan. What it will be enlisting, what kind of activities will be there to ensure different kind of environmental impacts are mitigated. So for this, we need to identify environmental impacts, which was the first step of our EIA. So if you see those 14 steps, first step is to identify the environmental impacts of your project. What will be the effect of any kind of project activity? So while executing the project during operation and construction, for example, if I see that during construction, there will be lot of dust emission will be there because of the regular transportation of construction material and movement of trucks and vehicles from the project site. There will be lot of dust emission will be there, noise pollution will be there. So what will I do to mitigate during the construction phase? So I will ensure that there is regular sprinkling of water on those roads, and if possible, some material should be sprayed on the road so that the surface layer is hardened. Okay, so these kind of materials are also coming up in the market. So we propose an L&T or any good construction contractor to mitigate the air emissions at the project site by using these kind of materials which can harden the surface and mitigate dust emissions. Okay, so for curtailing noise pollution, I will ensure on the both sides of the road there is a huge barrier of trees, so that there is no noise pollution is curtailed, and there is buffer for noise pollution with from the immediate. I request if any participant has not muted itself, there is some noise in the background. Kindly mute yourself. And then when we'll be asking questions, you can unmute. So there should be a minimum disturbance to the natural environment due to the project activity and environment monitoring program. So for example, in severe projects, there is regular monitoring in every quarter for ADB and World Bank project also. And if there is environment clearance, after you get environment clearance, in environment clearance letter itself, there are 40 to 50 conditions which have to be adhered during the period of environment clearance and during the period of project activity. So in those guidelines, it has been mentioned how many times you have to get your air monitoring report, how many times you have to test your water quality, effluent water quality, noise levels in your project site. So all those conditions which are there in your environment clearance letter, they have to be adhered, and the adherence or the kind of actions which have been taken have to be reported every 6 months. So they are called 6 monthly reports. So those 6 monthly reports have to be again submitted to the regional Ministry of Environment and Forest Office, as well as to a copy is again sent to the PPCB and Central Pollution Control Board. So these tools are basically ensuring that whatever you are committing during the process of environment clearance, whether when you are presenting your project to the state level committees and assessment authorities, then all those conditions you are implementing during the project duration. Okay, so whatever you have implemented, then you have to submit 6 monthly reports also. So again, all the apprehensions and aspirations of local population is taken care of. For example, there was a Cycle Valley project where all the industries in the Ludhiana city, cycle manufacturing industries, which were existing in a stand-alone locations, they were called together, and they were like, a project was established, High Tech Cycle Valley, where all those manufacturers and industries were told to relocate. Okay, so all the industries were planned to establish at a one location. For example, yesterday also we were talking that special economic zones or special zones and areas have been allocated for specific industries. So in that project, when we had conducted public hearing meeting, so in that public hearing meeting, local people told we need a training center under the project, so that even when our local youth is not trained for project activities, they can be trained before being employed to the project. So that was a very good idea that was proposed by the local people. And the project proponent can also can be benefited, because they will get like they will get local employment, and the local employment can be trained in their own training center according to their own requirements of training and activities to be done by the workforce. So those kind of apprehensions and aspirations of local population can be included in your EMP. So if, for example, I am proposing that I will install RO water units in the religious place in the vicinity of my project, but the local population is telling we need better infrastructure for our schools, we need better furniture and better lighting equipment in our schools. So rather than going for the installation of drinking water treatment plant in religious places, I will go for the educational infrastructure for schools and local government schools that are there in the project site. So whatever is the demand of the public or population, local population, that should be met with your project activities. And it can happen only when you discuss in public hearing meeting or in stakeholder consultations, or during the focused group discussions, as we have discussed in the tools required for socioeconomic assessments. So again, EIA notification. Now this was all about environment impact assessment in general. So when this EIA was covered under the Environment Impact Assessment Notification of Environment Protection Act 1986. So it made EIA mandatory for different categories of development projects. So if you study that EIA notification, there are around 39 different type of projects which require prior environment clearance. So those projects vary from thermal power projects to common effluent treatment plant to area development plant to construction projects, even for foundry projects, pharma industry. So all those project activities are covered, and there are specific technical documents for conducting EIA for each of the industrial project, and accordingly the Ministry of Environment Forest is there at the center. For the large areas, for the large projects where the magnitude of the activity is very high, the application is considered at the level of Ministry of Environment and Forest. But for all construction projects, State Environment Impact Assessment Authority at state level takes place, unless and until there are some general conditions. So general conditions involve if the project is near the highway or near some ecological sensitive area or biosphere reserve area, then it will go to the center level, Ministry of Environment and Forest. Otherwise, it will be considered at the State Environment Impact Assessment Authority if it is a construction project. For all other projects, there are specific guidelines given in the EIA notification. So you should go through EIA notification 2006. So if you search for circular SO 1533 in Google, you will get this EIA notification 2006. So the committee screens the project, this SEAC. So first the project goes to the SEAC, the committee, then SEIAA, State Environment Impact Assessment Authority. So in SEAC, there are 10 to 12 members, and in authority, there are 4 to 5 members are there. So you have to give a presentation of regarding the application you have submitted in Form 1, Form 1A, and feasibility report of the project. So again, if there is a comprehensive environment impact assessment is required, you are issued a TOR. TOR is basically issued before you start the environment impact assessment report. So TOR gives you terms of reference. It is kind of index, or it is a kind of table of contents which you need to cover during your next 15 months study or comprehensive study of environment clearance. For rest of the project, TOR is not issued. For comprehensive environment clearance, TOR is issued. Okay, so where complete EIA is required, then you have to get TOR, and then you have to start with your study of environment impact assessment. So basically the projects are categorized in 2 categories, A and B. So as I have already explained, that A category is the schedule where large projects are there. And for example, expansion of project is there, modernization of existing activities, and change in product mix is involved. And all project or activities which are included in category B, they schedule, they are basically considered at the state level by SIA and SEEC. So any project or activity category in category B can be treated in category A. For example, I told you that if it is in the notified area, or it is near ecological sensitive area, or it is near the state boundaries, then a category B project, the project which is considered basically at the state level, it will be transferred from B to A. And then again, there is a prerogative of central government that they can all again transfer that project to B category. For example, there was this Atari Wagah border project was there, and I submitted application to the Ministry of Environment Forest because I considered this to be a category project, being the project was at 4 meter distance from the international boundary of Pakistan. So I submitted this project to Ministry of Environment and Forest, but that again told us to, and they gave us a letter that this will be considered by state level committee and authority, considering the priority of the project and the international importance of the project. We need to consider it at a faster pace, so you can propose and submit the application at the state level rather than coming to the central level. So again, this is again decided by the Ministry of Environment and Forest and the committee members. They are sitting there, okay, who are again expert in their field. As per the EIA notification, you will see what kind of committee members and what kind of qualification is required for every kind of state level committee and central level committee. So this is basically now again, first we had discussed 14 steps of EIA. Now this is the process of environment clearance. So that the process of report preparation will be the same, but how you are going to get environment clearance from the state level bodies and central level bodies, this is again discussed in different stages. So first stage is screening. First stage is you will study the EIA notification, you will study your own project activities and location. For example, if you have not studied the project location and activities, and you have not noted that your project is at so much distance from any eco-sensitive zone, and you submit this application at the state level, so there will be delay in consideration of your project for environment clearance. When it will be realized that this project is not at the, it should not be submitted at the state level, it should have been submitted at the central level because of its proximity to the ecologically sensitive area. So that time will be saved if you have done a proper screening of your project and its activities, its location, its proximity to sensitive area, national highways, international highways. So that is the stage one, when you determine whether your project needs environment clearance, whether it needs comprehensive EIA or a preliminary EIA, or just a form 1A feasibility report, whether it should be in a B1 category or B2 category, because in EIA also there are two categories, B1 and B2 for mining and construction projects, which is again determined by the magnitude of your project. For example, construction projects from 20,000 square meter built up area to 1,50,000 square meter built up area, they will be considered B2. Okay, so they will require just form 1A and their feasibility report. So, but if it even require a impact assessment report. Okay. Then comes the scoping. So scoping is again the process where environment assessment committee for category A project, you have EAC. For state level committee, you use the term SEAC. So EAC is Environment Assessment Committee at the central level, and State Environment Assessment Committee for category B1 and B2 projects. So it is determined if detailed and comprehensive TOR is required, then you will go for obtaining TOR before starting the EIA. Again, stage 3 is the public consultation. In many projects, public consultation has now been excused, and they do, project proponent do not need to go for public construction for construction projects. And for area development projects, you need public consultation. For mining projects, you need public consultation. For foundry projects, so many industrial activities require public consultation, and few of the projects, private project, they do not require public consultation, especially for the construction related activities. So in this public consultation, there is an advertisement in the paper where your project name, location, and other major details are given, and people are called out for attending that meeting and giving out their suggestions as well as objections to the project activity if they have any. Okay, so then after that we obtain the responses. Whatever responses and suggestions can be incorporated or have been committed during the meeting that they will be incorporated, they are incorporated. So during that complete meeting, video recording is done, and local level MC people are there, then the local level bodies representatives are there, like one representative will be there from forest department, one from central groundwater board department, one from municipal corporation and DC office. So all those people, they note down minutes of the meeting. When whatever objections have been raised, they are also noted, and there is a recording photography of the complete process, and that is included in your environment impact assessment report. After inclusion of public consultation meeting and all the proceedings of public consultation are included, then it becomes a final EIA report, which is submitted for the consideration of the project to the state level committees. Okay, so that is when that your report is being considered, that is the stage 4, that is appraisal. So there will be scrutiny by detailed scrutiny will be there by EAC and SEAC, and the committee concerned will be discussing the outcome of the project, public consultations, what will be the project activities, and whatever queries they have regarding what kind of pollution will be caused, how you are mitigating, what is the budget for the mitigation of the project activities. So it is a very detailed out presentation that is conducted. Okay. So then the validity of your environment clearance again keeps on changing from project to project. For River Valley projects, it is valid for a period of 10 years, and project life as estimated by EAC or SEEK will be subjected to maximum of 30 years for mining projects. And these mining projects are major mineral mining. For minor minerals, again, for coal, budgery, sand, and boulder, it is again 5 years only, which was a few 2 years back extended to 7 years. So as per latest notification, it is now 7 years. For construction projects also, it is 7 years for the validity of your environment clearance. So this again validity can be extended by the regulatory authority, and again you have to submit the application if you want to increase the validity period. For example, if the project construction has not completed in the validity period, so then you, if you want to continue the construction project activities, then you have to submit your application for the increase in validity period. Okay. So again, coming to the next notification, which is there for coastal regulation zone. So basically, coastal regulation zone, as the name denotes, is the coastal line area where a zone is regulated. Okay, so whenever you have to understand and memorize any notification or law, you should correlate with all the terms that are used in that notification, which it will be very helpful for you to memorizing the clauses and memorizing the objectivity of that notification. So coastal regulation zone notification is basically for the Indian coastline of around 7,600 kilometers, and it, because this provides a very large scope for industrialization in terms of coastal and marine environments. And for example, for sand mining also, you need clearance from coastal regulation zone. And then you have to control the spread of industries in this zone, because these are very sensitive areas. Coastal zones are very sensitive in terms of the rich biodiversity of fauna and flora that is existing in these zones. So this came into EIA notification of 1994, and it has several guidelines for establishing development projects in coastal areas. So presently it is planned to revise CRZ notification, and a draft notification for coastal management zone has been published, and it has been submitted by MOEF for public and stakeholder suggestions. So basically all the coastal stretches of seas, bays, they are covered in these areas up to 500 meters from the high tide line. So again, you have to calculate the high tide line and the land between low tide line in the area or where you are planning to implement your project, so that appropriate distance can be maintained from the high tide line for your project development activities. And accordingly, for category A and category 2, you have to ensure that this category 1 is basically for very ecologically sensitive and important areas, but in for category 2, areas that have been already developed or close to the shoreline, this is the category. So always category A is stricter than category B. Similarly, category 1 is stricter than category 2. And again, in category 4, there are coastal stretches in the Andaman and Nicobar, which have been designated as CRZ1, CRZ2, CRZ3. So areas that are relatively undisturbed, and those which do not belong to either category 1 or 2 are included in the category 3. So this will include coastal zone in the rural areas, and also areas within municipal limits or other legally designated urban areas. So there are different kind of restrictions which are imposed in different kind of category 1, 2, 3, and 4 zones. So accordingly, you have to see where you are implementing your project and what kind of restrictions are there for the category that is pertaining to your project activity. Okay, and accordingly you have to ensure that the construction activities related, if there is a project of defense requirement or Department of Atomic Energy, it will have different conditions. Okay, so if the project is of residential building or office building or a hospital complex, it will have different conditions. So you have to see from the perspective of your project activity. As we had discussed, environment impact assessment is related with the impact is related with the project activity at different phases of the project. So CRZ notification covers all these kind of industries which are enlisted in front of you: crude oil, LPG, motor spirit, kerosene, because these are the resources, petroleum products which are obtained from coastal regulation zone 1. Okay, except for CRZ1, sorry. So now comes the strategic impact assessment. So strategic impact assessment can be defined as a systematic process of evaluating your environmental consequence. So it is not a detailed environment report, but it is a very recent tool, and it came into picture in 1980s, when it became clear that the EIA procedures in many countries did not require application of EIA to policies programs. So it is basically a tool for implementation of actions having significant environmental consequences. So basically it is a smaller version of your comprehensive EIA. So you strategically you determine what are the environmental consequences of your proposed project, plan, or program initiative. So it may not definitely be an industrial project activity. It will be a policy, plan, or program initiative. So whenever there is a policy, plan, or program initiative associated with some environmental consequences, this strategic impact assessment tool comes into picture. So different between EIA and SIA is that they must which must be considered by any government agency or private sector entity wishing to introduce. Because if I am a policy maker, I am a decision maker, I have to take the decision whether I want to take the complete process of EIA, or I just want to concentrate on the project consequences or the policy consequences related with environment and take action pertaining to that. So I will take up SIA if I do not want to involve too much time or resources in my study. But if I observe that there can be many implications which will not be observed in SIA, then I will definitely go for the comprehensive EIA. So basically, from the last 1 decade, SIA has been extensively used in USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, because this study can be done inadvertently for all kind of policy and project related initiatives or social projects. So it can function as an umbrella under which EIA, ESIA, ESMP, social audit, all kind of studies can be done if as per the requirement of the project. So in abroad, in other countries, SIA is basically termed as a sector specific. SIA can function to cover all kind of aspects related with environment. So stages in the development hierarchy, if you consider, first is SIA, then comes the project EIA, which is basically detailed EIA. SIA is basically related with the policy, plan, and programs, while project EIA is related with the project activities or the industrial projects specifically. Then comes the EMP, which is related with the implementation and monitoring. So again, there is similar to the EIA, in SCA also there is involvement of public, and consultation needs to be done with public, so that whatever substantial recommendations and observations they have made, they can be included in your project activity. Because many at times the local people are more aware about the kind of applications your project can have and what kind of impacts your project can have in that area. So as a person from outside, or as a person, as a novice to the project location, you may not be able to identify specific issues related with that project location and the project community. So that can be identified by the public involvement. Okay. So these are some of the good practices and guidance for SCA. So these methods which are used to undertake SIA must be valid, relevant, and legitimate. So relevance is basically in relation with the dimension of sustainable economic development, and it will ensure different issues will be relevant for different areas and different project activities. It will vary from the case to case. So there cannot be there has to be a tailor-made approach to ensure that the project activities and the EMP plan is relevant to the project site. Okay. So again, for validity, you have to ensure that how much duration the project is going to take up, whether the project impacts are temporary or they are permanent. So if they are permanent, the validity should be lifelong, and if they are temporary, validity can be dependent upon the project duration. Okay. So it is, validity is again generic, site specific or site dependent analysis is there. Okay. Then it has to be legitimate. To ensure legitimacy, what you will do, that you are able to approach all the peers in that study area. So again, there has to be a transparency. If you are not able to communicate the results of your project to the local community, that means your results are not legitimate. You are having that fear of getting objection from the community that you have done a wrong study or you are giving some wrong results. Okay, so legitimacy will be ensured only if you are transparent, and only when your stakeholders have been party to your project analysis, and you are identifying what kind of conflicts can be there, and you have ensured that mitigation measures are incorporated in your project to minimize those conflicts in later stages. Okay, so that will ensure legitimacy. Again, the success of SEA will be dependent on the policy, institution, and methodology of your projects. So again, these are the project procedures, steps of SIA, starting from initiating the projects to the closing of the project and through the process of monitoring, execution, and closing. Okay. Then comes the environmental auditing. So basically, environmental audit is an evaluation of a person. It can be for organization, it can be for an enterprise, and it basically, when you see environment audit came into picture when Form 5 was required from every industry. So at the end of financial year, every industry is required to give an environment audit report in which it lays out all the kind of resources it is using, the water, the air emissions, water requirement, as well as the raw material which is required for the project activities. What are the emissions in response to the project activities? What are the control equipments, pollution control equipments in response to each of the project activity and emissions, and what is the plan for the future? So all that comes under the environment auditing. And nowadays it is not just supposed to be with industry or for any large organization or some large factory. It is again required from all kind of institutions. Even educational institutions are required to submit an environment audit, or the nomenclature might be different. They are sometimes called green auditing report has to be submitted. So it is again a kind of tool where you observe systematically, where you document each and every activity, and each and every analysis is done in a documented manner, and periodically it is done. So before doing an external audit, internal audit is basically done to ensure the performance of all your organization components are in place. Okay. And if there are some gaps that can be the remedy can be found at the initial stage itself, rather than going at the external auditing level and then correcting it. Okay, so I will assess that, okay, my an organization policy is that I will be implementing ISO 14000. So that is my environment policy. Now, if I am auditing my organization, I will see whether ISO 14000 is being implemented or not, whether all the documentation which is required to be done under ISO 14000, and whether all the activities that are required under ISO 40000, whether it is being done or not, whether I am ensuring that my energy efficiency is maximum, whether I am ensuring my all safety protocols are there, my workforce is having best of environment, it is not being exposed to any fugitive emissions in my industry. So all these issues are covered under environment auditing. And again, the goals are basically to identify and document, as the name suggests, environmental auditing. So you are basically auditing. This is basically an audit of environment of your industry. So what encompasses environment of your industry? As we have studied in EIA report, EIA is basically from design phase to the project completion to the operation stage. But environment auditing is basically for a particular financial year and for an operational project. Okay, so basically in an operational project, what will we do? We will identify and document facility compliance status, whether my facility, whether my industry, whether my factory, whether my warehouse, storehouse, or call center, it is it is complying with the and all the environment guidelines or not, whether the production is basically at the least cost of the resources or not, whether it is making excessive use of fuel or excessive use of power and electricity. So I will ensure that energy efficiency is achieved. So I will assist in improvement of overall environment performance and then assist facility management. So basically it is a very useful tool. And again, if during the as per the goals of environment audit, I will provide information to all my workers, all my workforce about the environmental compliance of the industry that is required. I am as an industry, we are committed to environment compliance. So that again is reflected from my policy, and if my has been educated to all the employees, then it will also help in implementation of that policy and implementation of activities. Because if the employees are aware that, okay, this is our policy and all these activities have to be implemented by us, I have to ensure that I have my safety is there and I am causing least environment pollution. I'm not spraying large quantities of chemicals on my products for its protection. So those all those kinds of resources have to be minimized, which can cause damage to the environment. Then provide assurance to senior management. So senior management also gets to know, okay, my company is responsible and my officials are aware of my compliance required. And again, we can set up long-term goal, because if all the people who are working in the organization become party to achievement of these goals, then there is a hope for long environment audit program. So again, these environment audit can vary from liability audit to management audit as per the requirement of the industry. These audits can again differ from project to project, from industry to industry, and these are basically voluntary audits. So form 5 is requirement as per law, but otherwise functional audit, management audit, liability audit, they can vary from company to company. And for example, health and safety audit is important for every kind of industry. So they have, but their detailed activities can differ from chemical production facility or a call center. So there will be different kind of contingency planning for different kind of industries and activities. There is again due diligence activity before carrying out any kind of company merger or any kind of site acquisition. So I have also done few due diligence audits, and this is done when a company, for example, a company came from Mumbai and they wanted to acquire some land in Punjab. So they had no idea whether the company from whom they are purchasing the land is environmentally compliant. Okay, so they observed that there are some newspaper coverages are there regarding cases and legal cases which are going against the company from which they are purchasing the land, but that proponent is telling them, okay, please purchase land from me. There is not an issue, and there is not any non-compliance from environmental angle. But if that company wants, they can do a due diligence audit. So we as a consultant did a due diligence audit. We tracked down all the legal non-compliances of that company from where they were purchasing the land, so that they can be well aware what implications can be there in future, and what time and cost will be involved if they get entangled in any kind of environment non-compliance, and how much is the benefit if they purchase the land. So all that is covered under due diligence activity. Okay. So environment audit in practice can be done both externally as well as internally. Okay. So it can be done for major operating in facilities. It should be done internally for at least every 2 years. But for as a legal compliance, you have to do it in a format of Form 5 every year, at the end of every financial year. Then it can be carried out by neutral and certified experts. So there are many certified experts also, which are certified from Quality Council of India, and there are non-certified experts also. So that is again also as per the rules and procedures written by environment regulations of the company and the compliance and requirement of the company. So again, the steps are the same. They have to first obtain all the required data for the project site, then prepare a pre-audit activity chart and review the background information, review the operational information, conduct the site visit, prepare a questionnaire, discuss with all the employees and workforce regarding what kind of activities they are doing, because it is basically conducted for an operating industry. Okay, so these are basically the requirement of data that is there for an environment audit, and similar data requirements were there for the EIA, but for the EIA they were during the different project durations, start of the project, during the project, and after the project. But environment audit is basically during the project cycle only. Okay, for the operational period of the project. And then you have requirements for environment management system also, that this EMS 14,000 also requires that you should do environment auditing on regular basis. So these are some of the benefits. It demonstrates that an organization is aware, it increases awareness, it increases your efficiency in resource use. And again, as I have already explained, that ecological efficiency definitely leads to your economic efficiency. Then the last tool comes into picture is environment management system, that is ISO 14,000. So basically you have to be trained auditor under ISO 14,000 if you want to implement this system. Then again, you have to take up this course if you want to act as a trainer for this ISO 14,000 as an auditor. Then again, you have to take up this course. And if you are going to implement this system, then also it is beneficial if you take up this ISO 14,000 course, then only, because you will be able to understand the kind of comprehensive documentation that is required in this ISO 14,000. So each step and activity is laid down in different units of ISO 14,000 document. So it starts with the it is basically a voluntary standard. It is as per constitution or as per regulatory compliance of our country, it is not required. But if your company is dealing with some good reputed organizations, and you have a good you want to have a good camaraderie with your proponents and your competitors, then definitely, because nowadays all companies are taking ISO 14,000 certification, as well as ISO 9,000, ISO 18,000. So many ISO certifications have come up in the market. And if you are doing export of your pharma products especially, then you have to comply with WHO housekeeping safeguards, as well as ISO, as well as 9,000. Okay, so these standards specify the core elements of any environment management system. So if you are implementing ISO 14,000, then you should mention in your EIA also that we will be an ISO 14,000 company. Then it helps you to reflect to these SEEK and SIA members that it will, if it is going to be ISO 14,000, then the kind of environment management system will be very elaborated. Okay, so then they will not have any question on the kind of EMP or environment management system you are implementing. Because again, this EMS ISO 14,000 needs to be audited every year by an auditor, which is specialized in ISO 14,000 auditing, and they will review and renew your certification. So for renewal and revision of this certification from a reputed organization, you need to implement it in a proper manner. So it is basically serving as a tool for environment performance. Then it provides a systematic way of managing organizations' environmental affairs. Okay, so it is basically based on plan, do, check, and act cycle. So you implement a policy, you plan what are the policy initiatives and activities, how I am going to achieve the objectives of that policy, how I am going to plan that policy, then implementation and control. Okay, so again, you are going to check and take corrective action, you are going to review. Okay, so basically these are the steps. It is a very cyclic model, and these all activities keep on you have to implement these activities on in a cyclic manner. Okay, so many at times policy statement is also revised to keep it in line, in tandem with the current international environmental affairs and environmental issues in the environment. Okay, so ISO basically stands for the International Organization for Standardization, located in Geneva. So it is a non-governmental organization, and it is a voluntary technical standard. Okay. So basically you define policy, identify aspects, identify objectives, targets, implement, check, review them, and strive for the continual improvement and prevention of pollution. Okay. So these are the features. It is an international management system. So all the countries and all the international organizations, they are implementing same EMS, same ISO 14,000. It is not varying from country to country. It is an international environment management standard, and it is based on the SAGE recommendations. So these are the specific features. So basically it is being implemented in 138 countries since 2004, and there have been many revisions since 2004, and those revisions are incorporated. That's why even if you take up an ISO 14,000 course once in your lifetime, you need to take up the revision courses. Otherwise, the upgradations which have been incorporated in this course will not be available to you. Okay, so that's why you need to review, and you need to take up these revision courses again and again to continue with your certification. Otherwise, your certification will be valid for only 1 to 2 years, and after that it will become invalid. You will not be considered an ISO 14,000 certified auditor. Okay. So these are the unique characteristics of ISO 14,000. So considering the time constraint, I can I'll suggest that you go through these tangible benefits, because considering the kind of detailed explanation I have given to you for all the tools, same benefits are accrued from ISO 14000 only. So if you have any questions now, I'll request all the participants to please give their queries so that I can resolve them.